because
Say
is
that.
that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, best friends. There you go. We just, but
Friends.
it's really all friends, but it's.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and a Bible. This is day 19, and today we're covering Exodus 4, 5, and 6.
In Exodus 4, Moses returns to Egypt and Israel believe God's signs through Moses. Exodus 5, Pharaoh refuses to let Israel go and increases the work on Israel. Israel blames Moses for this. And in Exodus 6, God tells Moses he will deliver Israel and to keep his covenant. Kushti, were you just waiting for me to start there, or did the screen just freeze? No? Okay, that's awesome. I love that. I know that you start a lot of them. Lots to get to today. Actually, I say lots to get to. You've got lots to get to. I've got just a few notes that hopefully will make some vague sense in the middle of your prophetic speeches. So
Profound rather than prophetic, maybe?
probably more profound than prophetic. I don't think it's prophetic. Anyways, let's not. I shouldn't pad it out too much, should I? So I think we'll kickstart with you if that's all right, actually.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure
Peters.
thing, mate. Sure thing. So, yeah, one thing we do on here, signs for Moses, and it's just talking straight about Moses and throwing his staff on the ground. And I heard a message on this from my pastor here in Ontario a few years ago about this. And the points that really stuck with me were God says to Moses, "What's in your hand?" And it's his staff, right? And it's throw your staff on the ground. And it is God using what is already in Moses's hand. It's already in his possession, and God uses that. He doesn't have, like, God can use what we already have got, basically, and make that work for his plans. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to worry about it. He can take control of that. And then that becomes his God's staff, basically, at that point. And then also after he's thrown the snake on the ground, God says, reach out and take it by the tail. We're talking 4 verse 4. And the point that was made out of that was all Moses had to do was touch the tail. He doesn't have to worry about the head end, because surely when a snake, I mean, you're supposed to pick them up by the head because that's the venomous stuff, right? I think an official how you handle snakes thing. But he doesn't have to worry about the venomous end. He doesn't have to worry about the business end. All he has to do is just touch the tail. God does the big stuff, the heavy stuff, the heavy lifting. We just have to be like, ping, touch the tail, and then God's got the rest. And so, yeah, just trust me.
That's so beautiful as well, mate, because that reminds me of early in Genesis, right? The idea that it's going to be someone that comes along to crush the snake, but will get bitten in the heel. And again, it's God facing the front of the serpent. And all we have to do metaphorically is to touch the tail. Just believe, just through faith. And I just think it's just crazy, isn't it, as you go through the Bible in a year and you sort of see this completion of the same story all the way from these early beginnings, thousands of years before. It blows my mind every time. Speaking of God's power, I'll do my first one of 3 today. So the Lord said to Moses, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. So he's obviously rebuking Moses here for his doubt. I mean, he's literally just turned a staff into a snake and then back to a staff in front of Moses. What more does he need? And also, for me at least, this reminds me also of Job a little bit, because is that what you were going to say? Yeah. Well, best friends. There you go. We just, but it's really all friends, but it's very similar, isn't it? Like, God is like Job. Do you really think that you understand even vaguely the workings of the universe? Can you even vaguely understand this? And you want to try and, it's the same sort of thing, I think, right?
Yeah, full on. It's so cool. And God's telling him that he'll be with him step by step. So again, it's not like, all right, mate, off you go. Bye. Let me know when you get back with your Israelites. It's like, I'll be with you every step of the way. I'm not just sending you off and you do it then. I'm going to be with you, mate. And it's, again, there's so much reassurance in this when you actually find it. And God does the same thing for us as well, doesn't he, really?
I was just going to say, I've spoken before about I just needed to hear that. And you've done that to me a few times already on this podcast. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And, through the trials, whatever, he will be there every step of the way.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is touch the tail, so to speak.
Sure, man. For sure.
Love it. Love it. Speaking of touching the tail, I noticed choppy offy the foreskin. Let's talk about that, Mr. Peters.
Speaking of touching the tail, how did you get that? Mate, that is classic. All right, so I have this Apologetics Bible, which a good friend of mine, Josh, actually gave to me, and it is just glorious because it explains things when I don't know things. So we were both chatting, Adam and I, just beforehand about what is this whole. The wife's like, I'm chopping off your son's foreskin. There you go. Touch your feet with it. Now everything's cushy. Why? And so in here, in this little Bible, it says, why did the Lord try to kill Moses? To answer this question, it's necessary to examine how Moses' life was spared. The situation was reversed only when Moses' wife circumcised his son. Since the days of Abraham, God had required his people to circumcise their sons as a sign of their relationship with him, which is Genesis 17:10-14. As a leader of God's people, Moses was expected to set the proper example before the Israelites. When he failed to have his son circumcised before returning to Egypt, he incurred the Lord's discipline. Failure to meet God's requirement had imperiled both his life and his ministry.
Boom.
So there you go.
So it slams the Apologetics Bible. What I will say is Josh is a pretty knowledgeable fellow when it comes to this old Bible. Yep. And I think what happened, the reason I think he gave it to you is because he was sick of your questions. He just was like, here's a book, Adam, here's a book. And
instead. He also gave me the book Mere Christianity, which I just finished listening to instead of reading, because listening's a fantastic book.
I love a listen as well. Who's that by? Mere Christianity?
C.S. Lewis.
That's right. I knew I'd heard of it. That guy. Yeah, he did a bit for Christianity now and then, didn't
he? Anyway, we digress. Right. We've got a lot to get through here.
Yes, we do.
Little side note, I mentioned yesterday about how Aaron's a bit of an unsung hero. It does say here that the Lord said to Aaron, however you want to pronounce it, where you are in the world, to go and meet Moses. So obviously God is talking to Aaron. Aaron is hearing his voice. So there is that, which helps.
Absolutely, that does help a lot. Just a couple last ones from me, really. So Moses goes back to Egypt. Obviously, he performs the signs of God to the people, and they believe and they bow down and worship. That's Exodus 4:30 and 31. And I just had a thought of it just shows how much more faith the Hebrews had just naturally at that stage in history compared to Jesus is physically healing lepers and raising people from the dead and all this crazy stuff, and people still are like, not sure, right? And I just thought that was amazing. And Moses, this isn't even Moses, this is just power from God through Moses here. But then to finish my thought on Exodus 6:9, obviously Pharaoh increases the workload on the Israelites, and that's all it took for some of them to lose faith, and they're discouraged because of their harsh labor. And I just put that the greatest tool of the devil is to keep us occupied with earthly troubles. And I just think that's what thanks, man. I think that that's what we're seeing here. That's me. I'm out. Mic drop. I'm just going to listen to Adam now for the last minute or so.
All right. Well, interesting you mentioned about them being discouraged there, because it says in here that Moses reported God was reassuring and encouraging Moses, and he fed that back to the Israelites, but it says they didn't listen to him because of their discouragement. And how often have we been in those places where our friends and family gather around us during tough times, like, it's going to be all right, don't worry, you'll be fine. And we're just so discouraged that we just don't even listen. We don't even see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there is one,
Yeah. There's so much practical wisdom in the Bible, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And before we finish, I'd like to point out, for those of you that think I've been drinking wine every day for the last few days, we actually record a whole chunk of these podcasts in one go. We try to stay a week or so ahead of the podcast and record them all in one stint. And so that's why I've been drinking wine for the last few days. It's because it's just been the last hour.
One bottle. And I just want to clarify that I actually do drink Topo Chico every day. And so it doesn't make any difference whether it's a podcast day or not. I will be drinking Topo Chico.
Well, any questions, feel free to visit the Facebook page, Two Brits and a Bible.
Or email us at twobritsbible@gmail.com. Sweet.